Okay, I'm back. Let's do part two.
The live streamed footage, the camera showed the audience there were a lot of women, elderly, children. Children there looking at the camera and waving, while such vitriolic, hateful, xenophobic rhetoric was being said. And one
I just want to point out that I was there and I don't think I saw one child the whole time I was there. Like, there was, I know there were children there because I've seen people film children, but I think what the camera crews did was they deliberately picked up on the couple of children that were there, but the whole time I was there I did not see any children there. And I think I was aware that people wouldn't bring children to this event because they were, I think a lot of people would not want to bring children to the event because we would be worried that like terrorist attacks would hit out, or perhaps the anger that patriots would feel might start getting out of hand. So there was no children there, and so, but yeah, it's interesting though how he's like, there were women there. What else he said? Look.
waving, while such vitriolic, hateful. The camera showed the audience there were a lot of women, elderly, children.
There weren't children, but there were women and elderly people there. And the idea that, what, you can't say things like, let's ban the halal, let's ban halal meat, let's close down mosques, let's close down, what is it, let's, we have to go to war with Islam. What? Are women's ears too fragile to hear things like this? This is too hateful for women to understand. I mean, that's actually just an insult on women. You're insulting women by saying that someone like me, a woman, can't handle what was being said. It's like saying, oh my God, there's so many horrible things being said. Women can't handle this, that their fragile brains are going to explode. It's like, what? Are you insulting me? You're insulting me by saying that I can't cope with what is being said on that. And there was not children in the audience. Children also have to point out, loads of the people were like a foot taller than me. So there would have been absolutely no point of a child being in that audience because there was packed so together and with all the flags waving around. Anyone that was smaller than 5'3", I think I was probably one of the shortest people in the crowd. But yeah, where I was, there was absolutely no point of there being children in there because they would have, one, got squashed, and two, wouldn't have been able to see anything anyway. So there was no children in the audience.
Children there looking at the camera and waving, while such vitriolic, hateful, xenophobic rhetoric was being said. A woman who had burnt the Quran, Valentina Gomez from Colombia. She was invited to speak and she was talking about fighting Islam and this and that, as you guys saw in the highlight reel. Then we had a guy called Brian Tamaki who was talking about the guy from New Zealand, yes, who was ripping the Islamic flag, according to him.
Yeah, I think people are trying to make out that it's standing for Britain, and it is standing for Britain. This is standing for Britain. The thing is, standing for Britain also means uniting with the rest of the world who hate Islam, uniting with anyone that has a common enemy, which is Islam. And he doesn't like it because he is Islamic, and I think he's actually making this video to try and divide almost by saying that, oh, this is supposed to be about England, and yet what, they're bringing other countries in. This isn't about England. I mean, why does it have to be about England is the question. I mean, people are saying what they think is best for England, but what is best for England is if England unite with other countries, New Zealand and Colombia, and anyone that has Islamic people kind of destroying their country with values that just don't align with free will and choice, freedom of choice, freedom of expression. And yeah, freedom of expression does mean that sometimes people will say things that you don't agree with, but they have the right to say it. And I think that the idea of having all these different people was about getting lots of different people from all around the world with different views all together to say, you know what, we are uniting not just the kingdom, but we are uniting the world under all these different views. And you can listen to all these different people and you can pick and choose what you agree with. But at the end of the day, you have that, choice of what you choose to believe and what you choose to not believe. And the one thing that all these people have in common is the anti-Islamic movement, the anti-Islamic sort of beliefs that there's something wrong with Islam. So I feel like it'd be wiser for an Islamic person to see this as a sign that actually the world is turning against Islam, and I'm very proud of them for doing this.
Calling to a religious war, ladies and gentlemen.
This is a religious war.
Yes, on the streets of London. Religious war. Firstly, how were these extremists allowed to come into the country? Secondly, Tommy Robinson said,
how are they allowed to? I'm pretty sure that they've come into the country because there's too many English people too afraid to say anything, so they've gone to different countries. I think actually, if you have extremist views and you're from New Zealand, it's actually probably better to go to England and start expressing all your extremist views. Why? Because you know that if people want to start attacking you, you can go back to New Zealand and you just hope that you're not as famous over there. I mean, I know that I would feel I'm saying lots of things that are against Islam, and I actually live in an Islamic country, Islamic area, this specific area. It's not a massive area. The centre is very multicultural, and that's only 10-minute cycle away. So I'm not in a massively Islamic area, but I am, and I would feel much happier saying lots of things against Islam if I knew that I was going to go somewhere else and be less of a threat. So I think that's probably why so many people from different countries were able to speak in this country, because they don't feel like they can be under threat for saying it, because they can go and hide back in a different country. That might be the idea, but at the same time, it's supposed to be getting people together to say that people all over the world feel the same thing. So if you're feeling this way in England, that Islam is taking over and replacing a lot of people, a lot of other countries are agreeing with the same thing. So I think that was the point of it. It was for Britain, but technically it was about uniting the world under similar beliefs and showing that we all have this sort of similar enemy, basically.
Said 2 days before Westminster Council wanted to cancel the event, the police said no problem, we'll let it go ahead, and he was praising the police.
I don't even know if the government did want it cancelled, but I think the government wanted it to make it very clear that they wanted Tommy to say that they wanted it to be cancelled. Why? Because the government doesn't want to be blamed for it. All these other people that come from different countries, they can go back to their country and probably feel a little bit safer because of it. But yeah, the government probably wouldn't feel very safe if the public thought that the government is responsible for this. If they think the government's not responsible for it, then the Islamic people or Islamic extremists, which there are a lot of them, they're not going to attack. They're not going to attack their government. I heard some statements actually that a huge amount of most of the people who support jihad are actually living in England now, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the truth, because technically if people have come from Islamic countries, which is a poor country where there isn't much work, if they've come over to England to get work, to earn money, and then they're using this money to send back home to fund their jihad of different countries, I wouldn't be surprised if that has happened. And because if there's more money in England, and this is where they're getting their money from, then this would be where they're supporting, they're taking money from this place and sending it back to their home place to it. And I think the government probably know, the banks must know what money is flowing from what country to another, so that they know, a lot of people in the government know that there are some really dangerous people in England. So maybe they deliberately got Tommy to say that. This is a smart move. That would be a smart thing to do, to get Tommy to say this, so that they feel a bit safer.
Even though these guys were throwing their traffic cones, well, they were trying to hit the police, but they couldn't even manage that. Look at this poor guy get smacked on the head by his own guy.
Yeah, some bad people. There were some bad people in the crowd that just seemed to want to attack the police. But yes.
Before, when there was a vigil for Charlie Kirk, a guy is literally saying everyone should be radicalized.
Be under no illusion. Meek and mild, turn the other cheek is over. Each and every one of you should be radicalized by what has happened.
And you also...
Yeah, I don't know why that guy wasn't at the rally. Why was he not? I'd love to know this question. Why has Tommy Robinson not joined with that guy? Because that guy wants to be a leader of UKIP and is against this. So I don't know. I think I prefer him. I think I prefer him to the older guy, but that he wants to run. But I don't know. Maybe they're trying to not look too strong. Maybe they're sort of keeping separate because they don't. I don't know. I think there's a reason why he wasn't there, but I don't know.
Also heard a Belgian politician called Philip de Winter saying, "Get rid of Islam. Islam doesn't belong." Now, irony was a lot of people were sharing footage that before they even started the march, a lot of these patriots were stopping.
Yes. It says nan wraps, but if you change the N and put the N, I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that? Nan wraps. But if you change the N and that N and put it inside it says Anna wraps. Anyway, I just thought I'd say that.
At these Indian stalls, getting a pakora. Yes, because an onion bhaji is a pakora, you know what I mean? And after having their pakora or onion...
Just because you're Indian doesn't mean you're Islamic. I don't know if they're Islamic or not, but yes. I don't know why you're criticizing this, because India and Islamic people don't really like Indians. There's a lot of wars going on, or fighting going on between them, so liking Indian food doesn't mean that you're not allowed to criticize Islam.
Onion bhaji, you can see this guy calling for the assassination of Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer needs to be assassinated, yeah? Someone needs to shoot Keir Starmer.
But ladies and gentlemen...
Yeah, that's a pretty radical claim, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel that way. I would not feel that way, but I do feel kind of angry. I'm feeling angry that the country has been taken over by Islam, or it's getting more and more... It's like, isn't it like 6% of people of the country is Islamic right now? And, you know, it's very, if it gets to 10% being Islamic, that's when it starts becoming very, very dangerous. And yeah, we're only at 6% right now, but it will increase. And I think people feel let down by the government. But yeah, technically, Keir Starmer was not the one who let all these people in. It was the Conservatives that have obviously... I don't know, because I don't know who's letting them in, because technically these people might not be letting it themselves. They might be letting themselves in by coming here, having children, marrying. You know, there's an easy way to get a visa, which is through marriage or a false marriage or pretend marriage. You know, but you can't blame Keir Starmer because he's only been in power for a year. This problem has definitely gotten worse in the last year, and I think people are wanting to attack him because they start seeing him as a typical Islamic supporter or sympathizer, should I say, an Islamic sympathizer. So I think they're angry over that. But does he actually want him to die? You know, I bet if Keir Starmer did die tomorrow, he would actually be thinking, you know what, I wish I hadn't have said that, because I don't want him to die. I just want this problem to solve, you know. Sometimes you can say things out of anger, and do you mean it, do you not? I don't know. If someone dies and you celebrate over that death, I think that's actually very different to them not being dead and you saying, I wish they were dead. I mean, it's bad to wish people dead, but it's worse if they do actually die and then you start cheering over their death. I mean, I heard actually some post saying that anyone that cheered over anyone who's trying to get a visa to stay in America yet are caught celebrating the death of Charlie. You know, I think they're going to have their visa revoked. You know, I actually support that, because it's a terrible thing to celebrate over something bad that's happened. It's a different thing though to be angry over something and want to blame someone. You know, this is a typical Christian kind of view, you know, blame the devil for everything. You know, I wish the devil dies and stuff like that. You know, I understand that view. But do they actually agree with this, or is this just said out of anger? Probably said out of anger.
I thought this was representative of the British people. I thought the people that were there were very peaceful. Are you now going to tell me that this anti-Islamic sentiment, literally labeling the entire Muslim population with one brush, is something indicative of the mainstream British position?
It should be. The Islamic people are people who see no faults in Muhammad. If they saw faults in Muhammad and his book, they wouldn't be worshipping it. They wouldn't be calling themselves a Muslim. Okay, there's lots of stuff in Islam that doesn't make sense, and there's lots of stuff in Christianity that doesn't make sense. But if you are happy to reject the nonsense of Christianity and accept the nonsense in Islam, why are you accepting that over the nonsense in Christianity? The nonsense in Christianity is is far nicer, and it promotes love for your enemy, and loving your enemy and forgivingness. It's about, seeking hope and a better future and getting on with people. But Islam is about no tolerance and not getting on with people. The annoying thing is this guy doesn't actually seem that bad. He seems actually like quite a decent person. You just need to shave off his beard. Shave off his beard, and he looks like a decent person. So he's just a bit blind. I think he's a bit blind to what his religion is actually about.
I don't think you would agree with that. Not only that, we saw people ripping up the Palestinian flag. However, on the other hand, we saw people fly the Israeli flag. So on the one hand, you're saying, yeah, we're putting Britain first. UK, England comes first, mate. But then on the other hand, you're holding up the flags of another country.
It's not hypocrisy. This is not hypocrisy. It's people saying Britain first, but what we need to do is get rid of Islam. And you know what? There's millions of other countries that support this belief, and we are going to raise the flag of anyone that also has problems. There's the Iranian flag too was up there, but of course it was the old Iranian flag, the one that had the lion on it. That's a warning. Whatever happened in Iran is a warning. They were not an Islamic country until Islam came in, and when Islam got to about 10%, that's it. They took over, and they basically killed lots of people and enforced lots of bad practices, and sometimes you need to be reminded of the problems of other countries for you to realize that actually it could be worse. If people start waving the English flag in America when at a sort of anti-Islamic rally, America might start waking up to what's happening in Europe, in all countries, that this Islamic number is rising, and the number of tensions and the number of divisions and number of this guy is acting like he's doing a good thing, but he's actually dividing England by saying that you're criticizing England for saying you're supposed to be putting England first, and yet you're putting other flags up there too. And you know what? Palestine doesn't actually exist, so the Palestinian flag should not actually exist because it's not been established. The Hamas was not a good government. They were supporting and paying for the murders and deaths of Israeli people, and they were teaching and brainwashing their people into believing that Israel doesn't exist but Palestine does, and that Palestine needs to be free from a nation that is actually recognized and called Israel. I don't know if Palestine is recognized in Muslim areas, in Muslim countries. It might be recognized in Muslim areas. But yeah, the fact is it hasn't been recognised in our country, and he is supposed to be in our country, so yeah.
The hypocrisy, ladies and gentlemen, is palpable. So for the people that are watching, especially the Muslims, first thing that we need to do is not to underplay, ignore or trivialise what happened yesterday. It was and is indicative of where the UK is heading to next. Number 2, uneducation.
That's a good thing.
Of our people is no longer an option. Why? Because
our people. I think you're talking about Muslims. Uneducation, being uneducated about your own religion, about what your own religion teaches, the hatred that your own religion preaches towards people that are non-Muslim, people that don't dress like you, people who shave are seen as bad. You're supposed to have long beards in your religion. There's a lot of intolerance in your religion, and you act like your religion is better than others because this is part of the Islamic teaching, to believe that there is one God. Even the call for prayer is literally a message saying that there is no other God other than Allah, and that is your main call for prayer. So it's basically your call for prayer is a reminder to all the Muslims that they need to get rid of any other religions in any other means. Now this is a dangerous religion, a dangerous belief, if you're having the call of prayer inside Christian countries. I don't even know why the Islamic call for prayer would be in a Christian country, because the Islamic call for prayer literally is about getting people to accept Allah and only Allah. But we don't call God Allah. We recognize Allah as being the God of Islam. So why is the God of Islam being preached in a Christian nation? I guess it's because I have been insulting Christianity for a very long time, but I think when it comes to insulting Christianity, I have to have a far more heavier debate about it, because there are good and bad things in Christianity, hence why I need to explain the difference. But when it comes to Islam, I don't need to explain the difference between good and bad, because I just see all of it as being wrong or incorrect or untrue, and therefore I have too much to say against it, and I don't feel like I can actually teach anything from it other than to teach people that actually it's just a list of things that annoy me. Even people speaking Arabic whilst preaching, they preach English, 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 and then they say something in Arabic, blah, blah, blah. English, English, English. I hate that. I hate that when you're trying to understand something and hear what they're saying, and then they keep fiddling with the words by adding things that you don't understand, different language into the words. I hate that. I absolutely hate it. I hate everything about the religion.
People that are uneducated can't defend their religion, not just going to these grammar schools, getting a big job, not knowing their religion, and living in their big houses until death overcomes them. No, people that will get educated and receive Islamic education and benefit the Muslims at large.
You need to be educated about how wrong your religion is.
Why? Because we are being watched. If you are an uneducated cultural Muslim doing some dopey thing, it's going to affect us all. Why? Because our actions are not only being watched, they're filmed, they get uploaded, and the whole community gets brushed with that.
And these people are being constantly brainwashed every single day on social media. Why? Because I follow these people. I follow them around and see what they are consuming every single day. They are being fed dozens and dozens of videos every single day of a non-white person committing a crime in the UK, across Europe.
I know.
I think that's exactly what Islam does. They brainwash their people into believing that being covered and veiled is not suppression. That's not women's suppression. That's just women getting closer to their own brain and to God, or in their own brain, or something like that. Nothing they say in Islam makes sense, but it is all brainwashing. It's brainwashing kids from a very young age into believing whatever their parents believe. It's a terrible practice and huge amount of brainwashing.
It's unfair. I know it's unreasonable, and I know it doesn't happen with the others. However, the Islamophobia machine is heavily invested in, and there are, look at the University of Berkeley. They have studies with CAIR that about $200 million was spent on the Islamophobia machine from about 2008 to 2013. That's about 70 organizations that were funded. And lastly, the point that I wanted to highlight is, I think it ties in with...
I think the whole of Islam was formed on Islamophobia. Islam was spread through jihad. What jihad is become Islamic or we'll kill you. And in prisons, a lot of people become Islamic because they don't want to be attacked by Islamic people. So they think, I'm going to become Islamophobic, and I'm going to become afraid of this religion, and I'm going to, technically Islamophobic is where you have an irrational fear of Islam. But you know what? I don't know how many people are actually willing to kill in the name of Muhammad. It's probably not that many. But if people start thinking that everyone in Islam can kill in the name of Muhammad, this Islamophobia is going to be formed because everyone is going to have this fear of it. And this is how Islam is able to conquer. So however much money has been put into Islam, this is all money that is I see as being money that's gone into Islamophobia, because they spread through jihad. Christianity spreads through martyrism, and people dying for Jesus and saying, I'm going to risk my life to get to support Jesus in hopes of getting into heaven. And Christianity is spread through martyrism, and Islam is spread through jihad. And what does jihad do? It creates fear in people. It creates Islamophobia, and this is how it spreads. So don't insult Islamophobia when the only reason why your religion exists is because of the spread of Islamophobia and people joining it because of their fear over it.
The second point is we have to practice our religion. Like from a small age, the parents now need to take more responsibility to make sure we are Islamically educated. We know our religion. Why? Because people that are uneducated and cultural, they are actually doing more damage to the religion. Because if you look at the advanced UK party, which is supposed to be an even edgier version of reform...
Part of your religion is to preach that if you are Islamic, you have the truth. Therefore, you are educated because you simply have the truth. It's not about actually knowing what the truth is. It's not about knowing who God is and knowing that God isn't all-powerful, God isn't almighty, the world wasn't made in 6 days and the old Bible. You know, it's literally just forcing people to believe that they are educated simply for accepting Islam. If you accept Islam, you are educated, even though it's not. Education is actually about reading a huge amount of text. It's about reading a huge amount of religion. It's about, learning a lot of things about the world and about nature and about how humans are and how animals are, because you can learn a lot about human nature from animal nature. This is what education is. And I feel like Islam doesn't even know what education is, because in their view, they're so brainwashed into believing that if you accept Islam, you are educated simply by accepting it.
The founder of that, the main guy of that, is Ben Habib. The guy was born in Pakistan, I kid you not. His dad was a Muslim. But what on earth did he do with him? So whilst these people are complaining of migrants coming over here and messing stuff up, we would argue the same bloody thing. This Ben Habib, who's plodded along and coming here and making life more difficult for the good Muslims that have actually contributed positively to this country. So, ladies and gentlemen,
I don't really think there are that many good Muslims. I think there are very good ignorant Muslims that don't know what Muhammad was like or what he taught, and they don't know what their book really teaches, and they don't seem to question anything. And I don't know what Habib. I don't really know who he is. But yeah, I think you're not.
Gentlemen, the more religious we are, not the sectarian Muslims that just talk about differences all the time. No, the practical ones, the ones that follow their religion. Orthodox Muslims, however, they understand that we need to coexist and live with each other without just talking about our differences, thinking that...
I don't agree. I don't think we can live together.